We're smooth 98.1 FM. Good morning and welcome. It's time for Freshly Pressed. The papers ready, steamy hot. And so, the analysts this morning, it's a Friday, the 26th of April, 2024. And we're ready, as I say, big warm good morning to Joseph Obari in the nation's capital.
Thank you, Omat, and welcome, listeners.
And of course, we also got AB Bozimo. Good morning, AB.
Happy Friday to you. Good morning, Omat. Good morning, Joseph, and good morning to all of the wonderful listeners.
All right, so let's get things started out this morning with a very special way as we will get ready. But we might just take a beat now to correct just get the sound right. So just hold on there. Let's get the connection sorted out a bit, and then I'll be with you shortly. So, but just be sure, let's get your messages across to 0809-444-0981 WhatsApp message. And you can also go over to youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos on YouTube. Subscribe, leave your comments there. Hold on as we get this right on the way.
Must be something in Lagos because it's sounding good here.
Yeah.
And that is started already. Let's get on into the papers right now, gentlemen, as we can get this set. So the audio good. Sir Joe, can you get us right now?
Yeah, sure, clear, loud and clear.
This is better now. So let's get on to begin this. AB, do us the honor and let's get into the paper with the Daily Trust newspaper, where it speaks here saying, federal government begins infrastructural upgrade of 50 secondary schools across the country. Speak to us about how timely and important is the infrastructure that's where children go to get education, especially secondary education.
Well, this is apparently part of, what you can call the government's focus on the education sector, as they say, evidenced by the budgetary allocation to that segment. They're trying to upgrade 50 secondary schools across the country. I'll first of all say it's good. 50 is more than zero. But I'm curious, 50 out of how many? Then you kind of get a sense of where are our priorities. And then they're upgrading senior secondary schools. Great, again. But those senior secondary schools surely they have a foundation of the junior. I find it interesting that you are singling out senior secondary schools and not necessarily, at least in this story, working on the junior secondary schools that are a feeder to those senior secondary schools. I would hope, imagine, or expect that you are going to upgrade a secondary school, both senior and junior. And part of it, definitely, you see, education, it cannot be overstated, is the number one way to move a people from a point of low significance and productivity to a much better one, both domestically and internationally. So they're talking about doing this across 50 schools. I would love it if some of these stories can give us names, states, schools, because surely there's a list of these schools somewhere. And when you're talking about it, it's good for us to understand the thrust. The 50 doesn't readily go into 6, our so-called geopolitical zone. So I'm just curious how they selected them and all that. But that, of course, may be contained inside a further detailed report. I think the key thing, they also said that other areas need intervention, like perimeter fencing, e-libraries and conventional libraries, multipurpose halls, student hostels, classrooms, and staff quarters. So when you say upgrading, if these are not included in the upgrades, what indeed are you upgrading? I'm just, again, this story leaves me with more questions than answers. As I say, conceptually, it's great to upgrade. Over time, you shouldn't leave facilities how they originally were built or intended. But if these other things are separately requiring upgrade, then I'm curious. It includes classrooms, staff quarters for teachers, students' hostels, multipurpose halls, conventional and e-libraries, and school perimeter fence. What is left in the school if you did not include this in the upgrade according to the story? So I'm just, upgrade by all means, but surely the upgrade should include these very fundamental things. Let's watch and see and get more details over time. And then you have an upgrade. What is your duration? Are you going to take 50 years to do 50 schools? Or are you going to do these things in a relatively quick time? And you're about to do the upgrade as the rainy season is coming. Will it have an impact, an effect on the scheduling? These are all thoughts to think about when you're attacking projects.
Well, just looking at, because you talked about locations where this would be impacting. Now we look at, because we are a regional kind of country where everything must spread to the geopolitical zones, 6 as it is right now. So I'm trying to do a quick maths of 6 divided, 50, and let's see how it breaks into that. It'll give you an idea. Yes, so you know the spread a bit now. And then in defense of my people, the journalists who go out most times, there is always this idea when you speak to government official, they often not forthcoming with some of these details. When you ask them, how much, for example, will this cost? It's always focus on that will be a separate matter entirely. You always get these
they
issues.
Don't even think through those processes.
Yes.
They don't ask those questions.
So sometimes in defense of the journalist who goes out for some of these reports, sometimes these are some of the hurdles. You sometimes literally would have to beat them, these facts out of them. Sometimes you ask these questions, they'll tell you what they feel you should hear. That's just in defense of this man, of the reporter this morning, because I know that they often get weeping most times on the show. So I need to put this out there before they say, oh, Maz, you act as if you don't even...
I was going to go to that angle.
So, Joe, let's go over to the next paper now. This next story for us is anyone who knows you knows will know that this is your terrain. You had a great impact in this area, so it's good this story falls on your table. Let's go to the Daily Trust newspaper. Nigeria set for co-location for refining as NNPC signed deal with African refinery in historic move. So what's the significance of the story, and how would this impact fuel refining of crude in Nigeria?
All right, so there is a Port Harcourt refinery right now has 2 sections. One is 60,000 barrels per day refining capacity. The newer one they built was 160 and I might get my maths correct. 150 and 60, yeah. The older one was 60 barrels per day. The other one, new one, was 150, making it 210 barrels per day. Now, what they are saying is that African refinery will now build an additional refinery inside the grounds of the existing refinery.
A refinery within a refinery.
Refinery. But this refinery means that it's going to feed into what already exists. Somehow, maybe through engineering, they'll be able to achieve that. Then they'll be able to feed, or even right now, it happens in crude oil production, where, for example, Seplat feeds into the Shell terminal. So that kind of arrangement can be made. So by that agreement, you sign equity because you're giving them land, maybe you're giving them whatever, and then maybe you're also contributing. The project is going to be $2 billion. And the impact is that we're going to have an additional 100 barrels per day of refinery operating, even though the old refinery was actually not doing 210. Even when it wasn't operating for years. Of course, we know for almost a decade, more than a decade, the Port Harcourt refinery was comatose until they now decided to embark on the rehabilitation. $1.5 billion rehabilitation, almost the cost of a new one that this African refinery building. So these are some of the ironies. And this April, the government promised that the rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery will get operational. The promises have been made December last year. The goalpost keeps shifting. So questions are being asked. What is actually happening with that the Port Harcourt refinery itself that government NNPC Limited is involved in? You know, of course, one of the advantages of having NNPC become a limited liability company is the flexibility it now has to be able to make this kind of arrangements. Overall, it means we have more refining capacity in the country. And by the time we add this to what Dangote will be coming up with, then we know that somehow we are getting somewhere. And that gives me a word for modular refineries. People always assume that modular refineries are coming to play in production of petrol, which curiously my media colleagues keep calling PMC, which I don't understand. Petrol is petrol, please. So the petrol production, most of the modular refineries are actually not involved in petrol production. They are actually into diesel and other kinds of products. And so that narrative is always gotten wrong. People always think that modular refineries will have a help in increasing petrol production. You know.
So, Joe, I like to stay a bit on that. So, look at the process. In the process, if my chemistry knowledge still serves me right, the process, in order to get diesel, it's a process. As soon as you move, the temperature goes, all the product begins to come out. So, isn't this a waste of the process in itself? If you tell me modular refineries don't yield any contribution in terms of petrol to the process, but yet it's a waste then.
It may not be a waste depending on what they are trying to achieve, because there's a just like you said, chemical process. What kind of heating or whatever you're going to crack in there, you're going to do that will achieve. So maybe it jumps certain steps, but most modular refineries really do not, and their capacities are really smaller when you consider that.
Abi, you want to jump in on this one too?
That ever-changing date of commissioning the Port Harcourt refinery now has a new excuse not to be achieved. We had December last year, then it was February. We are finishing April, and instead of us saying the refinery is about to start, we are about to build a brand new refinery in the premises. We have a perfect ready-made excuse for that same refinery not to come on stream. I'm just putting that out there.
All right, so before we reach out to the next paper, let's reach out to the listener. We'd like to get your thoughts relating to the headlines on Freshly Pressed this morning. If you send us a WhatsApp message, just send it to 0809-444-0981. And then you can also see a live stream of this segment right now on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. Subscribe to the channel, leave your comments there. Let's go on to the Daily Post newspaper, AB. And this headline is it a cause for concern? Flights diverted as fire breaks out at Lagos Airport. MMA, that's what it is.
First of all, nothing in the report suggested that there had been any loss of life or injury. So that's the first thing I'm very happy to hear. I'm also very glad to hear that when smoke was detected at Bridge E54, within 1 minute, the fire services sprang into action. Within 1 minute. That's credit to the fire service, because when the fire broke out, allegedly, it cut power to a certain terminal, and so they sprung on it. But it suggests that it was quite a large incident, because it took them nearly an hour and 20 minutes to get it under control, all the way till 6:41 a.m. So positives, it was detected, it was responded to very quickly, and it took some time, but evidently they brought it under control. So the suggestion is that there must be an electrical fault that had triggered this fire and all that. There's going to have to be a very detailed inspection to see what happened. There could be things of maintenance of certain equipment that has been overdue that leads to this. Sometimes there are errors. Sometimes there are genuine accidents and incidents. These happen anywhere in the world. I'll say my takeaway that's positive is that the response was literally within 1 minute. That is to the credit of the managers of that facility, and they were able to bring it under control. They're now trying to remove the smoke, because evidently the smoke must have spread within the place. I'm thinking that a design of such a place should actually have smoke compartments so that you can stop or you can lock down one area so that the smoke doesn't infiltrate the others. But I'm sure the people who are in there with this kind of prompt response will know exactly what to do. They'll properly evacuate the smoke, and they can now get the facility working again. I think E54, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the terminals that you normally exit some of those foreign flights, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely they would have had to divert some of those flights away from that gate. But I think we have spare capacity. It's not as if this would have meant, and pilots will, once they're directed to the new gate, they'll go there and people will offload as expected. Thank goodness, as I say, I didn't hear of any injury, worse, any death. And the response time by the facility managers is impressive, within 1 minute. That is relatively unheard of in our climes.
All right. So just before we let the story rest and get listeners to get their comments on board, I look at it. It was diverted to D-wing instantly. That so you can see the need for a spare in case of emergency like this, the reaction. But I look at it. The events, the Murtala Mohammed Airport has been in the news this week for two reasons. This one, the second. Remember, flight Dana also had cause to skid off the runway, and here we are. Is this the call for extra vigilance in terms of the management of the airport?
In fact, it has been written in one very popular book that when you see different things like this, what you call noise, happening in a sector or in a business, you should be extremely wary, because these extraneous sounding events could be symptoms of something larger. Now, the minister shut down Dana operations. I don't know economically how prudent that was, because there are other people who have booked flights, who had appointments and all that, and suddenly they go to the airport and their airline is shut down because of one incident. Think about it really practically. Do we need to look into that event? Absolutely, with the highest form of responsibility. But if you can isolate the event, other flights with proper precautions can continue to operate. I'm of two minds. I thank God in that case too, people were not killed. In fact, what I commented when I saw it was that it's amazing, the new camera journalism we have everywhere in the world. People just came out of that thing and they're taking videos and pictures. Fine, they are healthy. And I will say, the markings on the runway were pristine, white, neat. I mean, I noticed that immediately. The key is that you're going to shut down the operation of an entire airline over one incident. It's like if I'm cooking in my kitchen and I burn one pot, I don't shut down my kitchen. I remove that pot from the fire and I wash it and prevent the next pot from being burned. That's all I'm saying.
Unfortunately, in aviation, it doesn't work like that, because if it's an airline that perhaps is not really keeping up to its schedules of maintenance and all that, the regulators simply get to check you properly to be sure that you're okay. Why would you leave the runway where you should be landing to land in the bush or the grass?
They say the grass maybe the grass looks greener. It looks greener.
It looks greener.
Let me say something.
Yes.
There are thousands of flights operated every day across the world. And unfortunately, in some dark days, there are incidents and sometimes even worse, accidents. Joseph, you don't shut down an entire airline. What you do is that you take very special notice of that event.
Oh, it does
and
happen.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't inspect their maintenance and all that, but they got off the runway. So is it procedures in landing? Is it their preparation? There are many things that are going to an aircraft taking off. They have said that the two most dangerous times are takeoff and landing. The point is, I'm just questioning. I'm not saying they shouldn't. After all, who am I? They have already shut them down. But what effect does it have on other people, and what the compensation for them? That's what I'm worried about. If I had a flight that was done, suddenly I'm stuck.
All right. All right. So, gentlemen, let's move on now to a next paper. Joe, lead us into the Vanguard newspaper, and now it's malaria issue. How long will the continent spend in trying to eradicate malaria, while the rest of the world land suyo cruise on the moon, and they're trying to get people to get real estate in Mars as we speak right now? Is the issue. But hey, let's see what it's looking like. It says World Malaria Day, AYGF calls for adoption of universal health coverage and others. That's the story. Lead us into the story, Joe.
Yeah. Well, the truth simply is that we are in a malaria endemic zone of the world. That cannot be taken away. I mean, it's nature's doing. And it's unfortunate that the mosquitoes we have here are not the friendly type. They always give you virus.
Militant.
It's all other parts of the world, mosquitoes bite you and they don't give you malaria infection. So being that this is what our reality is, you expect that in our infrastructure development, we are taking into cognizance all those environmental factors that enable the breeding of these vermins. For example, how do we channel water? We have all around us drains, open drains, water is not channeled properly. Even in road construction, we don't see channeling of water properly, and then how those water goes. So when you have bodies of water all around, then they create the grounds for breeding of the same mosquitoes that cause malaria. But apart from that, the concern is that on the average, from records, about 95,000 children of under 5 years die from malaria in Nigeria. Annually, 95. You see, maybe somehow we just get immune to, we're kind of used to this kind of figures. Because when Nigerians die, it looks like nothing really matters. People can die. You hear people just dying like that. So when you hear figures like this, you're supposed to be really worried and concerned. Unfortunately, it is agencies outside that really get alarmed at some of these figures that are statistics and sad reality. Now, because 100,000 children in a year is a lot. It's so much, it's high. Now, we're not talking about the adult population, people who die from malaria and so on, pregnant women who are most vulnerable. Pregnant women and children under 5 are the most vulnerable category. We've not added that to the statistics. We see that a lot. Now, what they're saying is access to health care is compromised in our society. I mean, a lot of people pay out of pocket. Even when you have malaria, you find people just go to the next pharmacy or chemist shop and buy whatever drug they can mix and take, and then they move on. They bear the pains and all that for some time, they go away. So there is no guarantee that a person who is ill, who does not have the money, can go to hospital and get treatment. The National Health Insurance, for example, is not really what it should be, because the pool, what they're trying to create is create a kind of insurance pool where people who are low income earners will be captured and will be able to access healthcare, among other reasons of what we can do to improve the malaria situation. A lot of funds comes from outside to support what the government is doing. This fund should be channeled appropriately to addressing those key areas. The attitude that, well, it is what we are used to, we can always carry on, we can always and pay lip service most of the time. It's not the best at all. It's not the best.
Maybe there's a little before we get into the next story.
Someone has described malaria actually as an engineering problem, because water is not the problem with malaria, it is stagnant water. And just like Joseph said, it is a case of improper management of water, whether wastewater and all that, that leaves it sitting in a drainage ditch somewhere, in a pool that is not drained, that gives the mosquitoes the opportunity to, perpetuate that cycle. So if we get our infrastructure, meaning our engineering right, we will have a direct impact on malaria, reducing its effect in our society. It's an engineering problem. If you don't ask the right questions, you might be pursuing the wrong answers.
Thank you very much, AB. Let's get on to a few messages I see on the horizon already. Let's see JP's thoughts here for us. He says, couldn't these funds or agreement have gone into the new one as against spending on less efficient refinery? NNPC needs to be restructured, right? Well, we still have major issues of crude supply. And the analyst is apt on modular refineries. That's relating to what you spoke about earlier on, Joe. That's what JP is just chiming on again. And then Ajayi says here from GRA, Sherry says, well, federal government proposal to upgrade 50 secondary schools across the country is just another avenue to siphon our resources. Our secondary schools should ordinarily be managed by state governments. Ajayi Olonilua from Magodo, GRA Sherry.
I'll with you on that.
He's right. Except the federal colleges, the rest should be by the states.
College. Then comes this
Unity
one
college.
from Gary Newton says the Port Harcourt refinery situation is now becoming frictional, which way Nigeria, December to April, now additional refinery within a refinery, just not to have it up running. This story, not the add up. Let them come out plain. That's what it says. Anthony, Tony from Marine Beach says, well, AB is spot on. This one, this is the tricks the canals are playing on us. I really don't know when and how Nigeria can begin to believe their leaders again. I wish to know the cause of the fire at the airport to draw my conclusion. And most often than not, you only know they say a revive, but getting the report. Why does it take aviation reports? I always like sometimes you've forgotten about the incident before the report comes out.
It's on the part of our colleagues to get the story.
Yeah, we go again.
Number two, aviation reports, they really go into aviation is a unique field where it's a no blame culture. You're not trying to find out who's to blame. You're trying to find out what happened so they can prevent it. So they often have to go into extreme detail. But I'm hoping that this one, having not been in a flight, but actually in a physical facility, will be easier to uncover.
All right. Let's go to D from Alausa says, Nigeria has a better aviation safety record than many advanced countries. Please allow aviation authorities to continue to do their jobs. You are likely to be as informed on the issue as the authorities that shut the airline down. That's relating to Dana now. That's D from Alausa. And Matthias comes in from Agor Palace, says, wrong, AB. An American airline was completely grounded when one plane was detected to have been poorly maintained by engineers who cut corners. But then after investigation, it was discovered that other planes in its fleet were poorly maintained. That averted potential disaster.
We're talking about Boeing, right? Boeing, when that Alaska Airlines door fell off, they didn't shut down the entire airline, but they started looking to the plane and its maintenance. And they have found that Boeing seems to have been cutting corners. So it's more about the airline type than Alaska Airlines. But we can always agree and disagree after the show. Hit me up.
All right, so then this goes up now. Let's quickly walk this one. Money Matters, Naira, wages now. The Nation newspaper, AB, in a minute. Let's see. TUC demands March-April wage award for workers.
That's Joseph's story, actually.
All right, Joseph, take it. Yes, it's yours then.
Okay. Anyway, TUC is calling for wages to be paid to workers. And I mean, agreement was made. Agreement is agreement, as we say. You say you will do something, do it. It's as simple as that. And it's only when they are frustrated and they come out and start threatening to go on strike, that's when the government wakes up and so on. So it's shocking. And all the time, when it comes to the benefit or the perquisites of office of these government officials that make decisions, they don't have any excuse to award themselves at all the funny. The money
delays.
Nothing delays it. But when it is for the interest of the country and other people and the less privileged person, because I consider every government worker is less privileged, because how much do they earn from the work they are doing? So why is it difficult for these government officials that make decisions to really deny, just for hold on my own for now? Let us make sure we allocate money to solve this, to attend to the needs of the workers. And the TUC is saying that even at the state level, some states are just not willing to, and they singled out Soludo for lashing, that the state is not paying the wages, economists and so on, and somebody they expected, and all
former CBN governor.
So it's not paying, and some states are not paying. So it just means that insensitivity on the part of our leaders to ensure that the well-being of the people is always protected. It's sad that it is something that people have to push, nudge for, even what is basic, and I don't understand that at all. So, and I'm just in that same story, I'm not surprised that Osifo is concerned about the Port Harcourt refinery again, because he spoke about, apart from the wages issue, he touched on a number of when they sat down, they discussed insecurity. They are concerned about what's happening in Plateau State. They feel that the government should be up and doing and address some of these issues, you know.
Right. Thank you very much. AB, one would have loved probably 2 sentences of yours on this next headline, which would have been, we've got 118 inmates on the run right now. That's according to a story from The Punch. Is this an engineering problem for a prison to have collapsed?
It
or
sounds like maintenance
design?
over maintenance, not design, maintenance, because it was designed, constructed in the colonial times, and arguably it has not been maintained properly. But you need to preempt these things. For a wall to collapse, the likelihood, if it wasn't one of those earth-shaking things, is that it has been eroded over time, and this big rain made it fall. So 118 people escaped, 10 have been found. That means 108 are in the streets right now. Watch out when you're buying food. If anybody seizes the food from you, don't argue. It might be one of the people on the run.
All right. Thank you very much. This is where we wrap up the conversation on Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. I want to say thank you to Joseph Obari for your time.
Thank you very much, Omar. Thank you, listeners. AB, it's been great.
And we say thank you to AB Bozimo. Agree, disagree.
Hit me up at AB Bozimo on all platforms.
Please with hammer, sledge hammer.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
All right, great.
And we're not done yet. I need you to come with me to the locker room at 8:15 for everything sports. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa.
Bye, guys.